Good
All
morning.
right, so it's good to have you guys. So this is one that came to my attention, I guess, I don't know, a month or so ago. It might be a couple months now. It might have been back in October. Um, but yeah, I guess it was October. And the stock has traded really well. Um, it's traded really well since early October. 12 cents to 91 cents was the high yesterday. We're 80 cents today. So there's some attention that's growing here. So I wanted to get you guys on to dig into it. I know you've done a couple interviews already, Charlie, but it's necessary to come on X and do it live. Inception, sort of the project, NIV. So tell me about the history of this project and how it came to be, Charlie.
Yeah, Rob. Thanks for having me on. A bit nerve-wracking getting onto this X thing. I'm a neophyte, but I'm seems like it worked out okay this time. Um, yeah, this was staked, by my partner Alex Walcott, who's a geophysicist, and we've worked a lot together over the years. It was staked by him initially in 2010. It was a known showing, I think, first reported by the Geological Survey of Canada in the 40s. Had a little bit of work, I think, in between, maybe in the 60s at some point in time. Someone did a little work on it. And Alex was doing some work in the region farther to the south, and I think he just liked some of the magnetic signature he'd saw in a regional survey that kind of went up that way and followed some sort of known structures, and really liked that. So kind of staked it on spec over top of this known mineral occurrence, which was a silver thing that had some decent silver in it. And there really wasn't much on it, so he staked it for a junior that was picking up a bunch of properties. And in the course of doing that, Alex staked around a property I had farther to the north, and that's where I met Alex. Actually, this would have been, I think 2010 or something like that. And then eventually it all came back out of that company. That was a venture they gave up on, and we all got our properties back. And in the meantime, I'd kind of gotten to know Alex, and we sort of got together on this, and put a bunch of properties together, including this one. And when you're doing that, you're trying to option them off or something, and weren't having too much success on that front. But you have to keep the properties in good standing, and in order to do that, you got to do work in the ground. So um, it kind of sat there for quite a while with assessment that was done on the initial program, a bit of prospecting and a little bit of mapping, not by me. None of that was by our group. But in 2016, we sent a small group in there for one day, and they did some soil geochem contours. That was led by Roy Gregg, who happens to be related to me. And yeah, so 10 years ago, just about, they went in there and they did one day of work, and they got some pretty decent soil geochem results. And that kept it in good standing for a while longer. And then eventually, that assessment work kind of ran out. So we reduced the claims. And I forget if we did a little bit more work then or something, maybe not. But we reduced the claims. And then, it kind of sat idle. I think that was in the midst of the GT Gold days. So things were busy. We were preoccupied, and we just kind of left it. And then a company called Serengeti Resources, led by Dave Moore, picked up some ground immediately east and liked it. And they doing a bit of soil geochem, I think, and then they liked it so much that they expanded, and they actually surrounded this whole NIV ground that we had. And then eventually they drilled it, and they made a copper gold porphyry discovery immediately to the east. It had a pretty nice drill hole with some good numbers in it, decent widths, 80 meters, I think, and a pretty nice, I forget exactly what the copper equivalent was, but it was good. And got the market excited. That was eventually, I can't even remember if Serengeti drilled it or maybe it was Northwest Copper because by then they'd merged with Sun Metals. So I think it was Northwest Copper that drilled that hole. So, taught us to sit up and take notice and like, holy smokes, we better do something here. So went out on the ground and kind of got a good feel for that and thought, hey, this is actually not too bad. And I think there's something here. So that kind of kicked off us doing work and it just went bit by bit. This has never been the focus. I mean, when you're doing things privately and you're paying for helicopters with after tax dollars that are in your pocket, it's never easy. It's quite painful, in fact. But we just did a little bit by bit when we could, when we had crews in the area, etc., and brought it along. And then each stage, seemed better. And one of the things that always stuck with me from a guy I did some work with quite a long time ago, a guy by the name of Chuck Fipke. You know what they say: never met a Charles I didn't like. Um, anyway, Chuck said to me one time, he said, and I think I had asked him about the Acadie project, the Canada's first diamond mine. That was what Chuck discovered, and I worked for him for a short time, and I asked him, like, what do you recommend on something? And he said, well, if you have a property, do as much of the work yourself. If you like it, just keep working away on it and hang on to it as long as you can afford to. And that kind of stuck with me. And with this one, you keep getting a little bit better results, do something a little bit more. And, both Alex and I have crews that we contract out to various clients. Alex doing the geophysics and me doing other things like geochemistry and geological mapping and that sort of thing. And so we did that and kept liking it and kept adding on to it. So it kind of brought it to where it is today, where we did, I think initially it was maybe soil geochem and then a bit more soil geochem and a little bit of geophysics, some shallow looking IP. And then we just kept adding to it and adding to it. And, in the last couple or 3 years, we've done quite a bit, with help of our crews, obviously. So, yeah, that's where it is now. And it's got a very nice coincident geophysical and geochemical anomalies
Yep.
in a nice geological setting.
So I've got a bunch of questions for you, Charlie, but first we're going to bring Stephen into the conversation. So Stephen, as chairman of the OR group and now chairman of MERG, that's the symbol on the TSX-V, by the way. What made this so compelling to you? Like, why did you like this asset so much?
It's all about the data. Fundamentally, it starts there, and the people who put it together. I've had the good fortune of working with Charlie and Alex for a number of years on American Eagle and other projects, and Charlie and Alex have been teasing us at the org group with this project for years. So we have been talking about it for a long time, and we looked, we dug deep into it. I've developed a good relationship with Charlie and Alex, and we trust them. Um, but of course, when you take on a new project, you got to do your own DD, and we did. And again, it goes back to the database. It's a very coherent, well organized database that is provides a clear coincident geophysical, geochemical anomaly, as Charlie said, that is in the right zip code, right? It's the right rocks. And when you have something like that, and it's not just about having coincidence, it's about the intensity of those anomalies, which are significant. And so we had a couple of our own guys, or call it arm's length guys, take a look at it. And I mean, and everybody we showed it to said, drill this. Like, and fundamentally, that's all you can ask for in a project is, we understand the risks, and we look and we seek the rewards that a discovery, a true discovery like this has the potential to deliver. And it checks all the right boxes in terms of what you look for and who put it together. So it's again, it's about the data, it's about where it is, it's about the relationship that that we've developed with those guys, Charlie and his team. We like working with each other. That's important to me. Um, So it just all lined up. And again, like we've been talking about it for years, but the stars aligned on when we did this. I guess we announced it in October, but it had been a long time coming. And Charlie wanted to take it to the next level, which means, big budget drill programs to properly test this thing, right? I think, and Charlie can speak for himself, but he didn't want to go in there and poke one or two drill holes. That's a very high risk strategy and a high risk business. We were aligned that we got to go in there and test this properly. And as everybody can see who's been following Metal Energy and the reasonable success we've had thus far is because we brought in two strategics, obviously Teck and Centerra, who saw what we saw before they knew about it, or maybe they did know about it, but they saw and they felt that these targets, is very worthy of drilling. And so, look, we had not much problem. Well, it's never easy, but given all those things that lined up, we knew we could raise the money. We didn't know if we were going to get two strategics. And in fact, a couple people have said, and I feel the same way, that I don't know if I can remember any junior getting two major mining companies in on a pre-drill property, which is, if it's never been done before, it's certainly rare. And that speaks to the underlying asset and again, the people that put it together, which is critical.
Okay, very good. So tell us about the financing that I guess is going to close later this week. Who participated in the financing, and who are the largest shareholders? So, once the financing closes, can you walk us through the largest shareholders in the company?
I think I'll be one of the largest shareholders. I'd have to do the math, but I'm certainly up there, and I'm very proud to say. And then obviously Teck and Centerra will be the as well as Ore Group has a piece. So it's me, it's Ore Group, and then obviously Teck and Centerra. And as we work through the option, I think Charlie and his gang will also be material shareholders, and the rest are who came in the financing alongside were all the hard dollar components, and those were people that call it friends and family, if you will. No family per se, but just people who are close to us. We put so important when you put a company like this, which is just effectively an upstart. You put those shares in strong hands. And that's anybody who's in this private placement has a long-term view. We want to see this out, and we accept the risk as we seek that reward of a discovery.
So when the financing closes, there'll be 43.4 million shares outstanding. Is that right?
Sounds about right. There's about just under sub 30, and yeah, I would say without knowing the specifics, that's pretty darn close.
Yeah, I'm getting it from your deck, so I assume that that's up to date. Okay. Let's go back to Charlie and just tell me about this land position, because it took me a little bit to realize what's going on here. So your main porphyry target at NIV, the one you guys are super hot on, is in the middle of a huge claim package that's held by another company. But you have another big piece of ground to the west. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that we call it West NIV. Add that on relatively recently. Yeah, I think the central piece, which looks small but isn't that small. I think if you look at our, I put a deck up there, kind of revamped it, and you can kind of compare it to things like that Aurora discovery that AMark made not far to the north. You could compare it to the Saddle discovery in GT. It's plenty big enough to cover that. The western stuff, that's more hypothetical. That's beneath the cover rocks that are quite a bit younger than the age of the deposits, and completely covered. But I thought, okay, well, let's protect ourselves farther to the west. Even though we are surrounded by Northwest Copper's ground, let's just cover that, because there's some prominent mag features that you can see out even through that Upper Cretaceous sedimentary rock cover, the Sustet group it's called.
So in 2021, your neighbor drilled 0.56% copper equivalent over a little, I guess it was a little more than 80 meters, including 1% copper equivalent over 15 meters. So that was like a new discovery hole. And that,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
where's the location of that, relative to your core target area?
That's just to the east, across a reasonable sized valley, not huge, but large enough. And it's sited targeting some nice geochem, and some nice gaussons up on that hill slope a bit to the southeast of there, and it has nice geophysical anomaly, nice IP expression, and that's kind of in a subparallel trend to ours. Yeah, so not far to the east.
Why did your neighbor stake so much ground? I mean, their property package is massive. I mean, 1,000 hectares is not small at all, but theirs is like 43,000 hectares. What's going on over there?
Well, I think they discovered that porphyry occurrence, and when you find one, you kind of think there might be some other ones around. Why they weren't more aggressive trying to get our ground, I'm not certain. I haven't really spoken to them in detail about it, but yeah, I think once you find one, there's still potential for more. I mean, if you think of any district, a good example might be American Eagle, and in the Knack Porphyry. There's Bell, there's Morrison, there's Grand Isle, and then there's Knack, and there's Amark's, Duke, not very far away. So they tend to occur in clusters, and when you look at the ground around NIV. There's Northwest Copper's East NIV. Obviously, they found a porphyry there. We think we can find a porphyry. And if you go a little bit to the south, well, there's, Golden Ridge or Copper Ridge, their RDP property with, a couple of occurrences there, and then you go to farther north, there's chemas, etc. Right? So yeah, they tend to occur in belts and clusters, and I think that's probably what their thinking was.
Hey, can you talk big picture for a second in terms of big structures here? Are there any big structures that we need to know about in this area of BC that maybe had you take a look at this area in the first place?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, I mentioned that to start with, that Alex, was working farther north. He might have been working for Serengeti when he was thinking about this kind of stuff. And you go farther south, you've got Quantica that they were working on, and that's along. I forget if it's near the Pinchy Fault, but there's a big bunch of northwest trending faults in that part of the world, and they have definitely quite a bit younger movement on them, and they're part of that whole system that runs up through there. The northern Rocky Mountain Trench isn't all that far away. That big fault, and there's one that kind of runs right up into the NIV property, and I think it's called the Two Lake Creek Fault from Two Lake Creek, which is kind of right there. And it doesn't really have a demonstrated displacement. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a tertiary structure, in part, so much younger than the deposit, which we know is probably formed in the late Triassic. Actually, it's a fairly old late Triassic occurrence from the dating that we've done. But do these tertiary structures follow earlier features? They may well do, and I think it's kind of like out in the Golden Triangle, where some of the big thrust faults kind of follow weakened zones that are basically altered zones that are altered by the big porphyries that soak the rocks and turn plagioclase into white micas, etc. Therefore, they're weakened, and I think maybe something the same is going on there at NIV, and so there is a structure kind of running right up The east, the west side of this thing, kind of separating Sustet to some degree from the older rocks, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's following, some alteration that maybe partly had that trend to start with.
So late Triassic, you're talking about like 210 million years ago or something?
Yeah, this thing is actually about 222, which is the
Oh,
same age as, it's a bit older than things like Aurora and Camas. It's the same age as something across the Bowser Basin to the west in the Golden Triangle, Shaft Creek, which is a Teck deposit that they've been working for years, and that's 222 there too. I think exactly the same age. That's the age of the intrusions. I think we actually might have a iridium osmium date off Molly too, and if not, we'll get one. But I would guess that'll be what it turns out to be.
okay. So now let's walk us through this target. So the focus of this summer, the drill program. Let's talk about that. The area that you're going to drill, why it's so exciting. I mean, basically the way I understand it is based upon all the data that I'm seeing. Everything lines up here. So just walk us through it, Charlie.
Yeah, you bet. I guess this work hasn't been done in as systematic a fashion as you would if you had this funding, before you started on the property. It's sort of like I said, it's done with. Hey, we got a crew up here. Can we maybe sneak a day or two in and jump on the chopper and get some soil geochem folks out trotting the ground and picking up some samples? And yeah, we were up there. I forget exactly which year it was, 2022 or 2023, and we were doing a bunch of work for AMARC, and they were good enough to let us, free up the soil geochem samplers for a couple of days, and that was sort of what really drove it for me. I started in the business as a soil Gumby, as I like to call them, and so I just said, we had some pretty good results with the initial contour sampling in 2016. Let's start at the north end and just do northeast southwest lines 100 meters apart, take a sample every 50 meters or whatever it was. We turned 5 or 6 of them loose, and we did about half the property that year, and it came back and it's like, wow, that's pretty coherent. And actually some of the numbers are very, very good, and they kind of all line up on a northwest, south southeast trend. And eventually we covered the entire property from one end to another. And that was, almost 5 kilometers, or even a little bit more than 5 kilometers. And it's pretty coherent all the way. Obviously at lower elevations where there's more organic cover and stuff, it weakens, but you can see that it has continuity from one end to the other, and it's quite broad. It's hundreds of meters wide in places, and a bit narrow narrower in other places for various reasons. But that's really what got it going for me. And the regional mag already existed, and we could see that it was a broad mag low, and there was a few mag highs within that broad mag low, and they kind of coincided with where the geochem anomaly was. So it's like, okay, well, this is pretty nice looking, and how does the IP look? And we really only had a little bit of shallow IP that was maybe done in that original program by Alex's guys, and there was a bit of an anomaly here and there, but wasn't a very broad survey. It was a very small survey. So we sort of added to that, and then eventually, in kind of the last couple of years, I think it was actually not this past season, but the season before, we finished up with some deep looking IP, and it gave us a really nice looking response. By then we did some airborne MT, because the rig was up there, and Alex knows the guy who runs the rig, and he flew it for us. And so, it all kind of lines up. So really nice gold geochem, with lots of values, plus 75, plus 100, plus 200, up to, 10 grams in soil. And then, good copper that goes with that. Molly kind of runs with it, all coincident. And then they're all coincident with the geochem or with the geophysics, and then geologically, there's QSP type alteration around. I don't think we're looking at a copper gold porphyry sticking right out of the ground. I think it's down there. You see all the signs. I'm happier than hell to test it. Will it be there? There's only one way to find out, and that's to drill it. And but the alteration and stuff that you see along that trend, it's kind of focused parallel to the geochem and the geophysical anomalies. So it's just a really nice target crying out to get drilled.
Yeah, what stands out to me is the MT and the IP. Those anomalies are pretty clean, and they line up well. Um, so is there anything you can tell us about, like, if you look at the MT slide, which is 11 in the deck, it's showing like what I would interpret to be a potential like pyrite shell to the west and east of the main core anomaly there. Is there anything about the ground in those areas that you can see? Is there any pyrite at surface or anything like that?
Yeah, there is. I mean, it's kind of it's not quite as when you see when there's a QSP shell like quartz sericite pyrite, you kind of in BC anyway, when you got elevation, you see a really nice gossan, a rusty zone, right? And certainly you can follow that. It's not as bright a gossanous zone as you see to the southeast on part of the East NIV anomaly that Northwest Copper ended up drilling. That's a little bit brighter, but it's there, and it goes right up over one particular hill bump. It's actually where I first landed on the property and started looking at things. And it's not a super bright gossanous anomaly, but it's there. So I think, right there, you're kind of a bit above. And maybe that expression is better at depth and a little bit off to the sides. I think it is. But it's there. And, what you see on the ground there are upper Triassic rocks, and I looked at them and went, out west, you usually can identify your rocks pretty easily. I can't really see much in these things. I would just call them a greenstone, which, is kind of what you use for a volcanic rock, out east somewhere. And you don't really use that term very often, out west where I've done most of my work, but I worked all over the place, throughout my career. So, I like that when I see a greenstone, it's like, oh, I don't even know what these things were. I can't tell if it's a dike or a high level intrusion like that, or, volcanic rocks, fragmental or not, where there are flows. I can't really see phenocrysts. And there's just a lot of little veins in them, and they're not particularly sulfide rich. They do have pyrite in them, almost every one of them, but not a huge amount, but lots of quartz veining and quartz carbonate veining, kind of like a stockwork, but not, loaded with copper at surface. Yes, you can find some beautiful chalcopyrite bearing veins that run a little bit of gold and some good copper for sure, but it's not the middle of a dense quartz chalcopyrite vein stockwork that you'd see in the guts of a porphyry deposit. So I think that's still hiding if it's there. And there's only one way to test it. And what kind of a signature would that have? Well, it would have, a nice chargeability anomaly coincident with a nice resistivity anomaly because of all the silica and the veining, and the fact that the host rocks are probably, more massive, either intrusive rocks or volcanic rocks. And we have all those around. And sure enough, really nice coincident chargeability and resistivity at depth. So really nice looking target.
What's your hypothesis right now for why the Malian soils is so much stronger at the northwest of the trend?
I think in part, organics, it's lower up there. It's kind of, you can see outcrop in the creeks, but otherwise way down there at the lower elevations, it's mainly,
It's lower elevation.
yeah,
Okay.
thicker organics. And the moly's quite interesting. People really point that out. How come it's narrower than than other things. Well, I mean, part of it might be, it's kind of toward the end. Maybe it's a little bit later as the system's just cooling down a little bit because moly gets deposited a little bit lower temperature. Maybe that's why. I'm not sure, but it's a very intriguing feature. It's definitely coincident, but the copper anomaly and the anomalies and the gold anomalies are broader for sure. It's cool.
So let me take a guess, Charlie, and tell me if I'm wrong here. So the first hole of the maiden drill program at the NIV copper gold porphyry target is going to be at the topographic high, and you're going to angle it pointing south. Am I
Yeah,
right or wrong?
yeah, close. We'll give you 95% on that one,
Oh,
Rob.
thank
Yeah,
you. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah. Yeah, southwest for sure. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's logical. There's a little cap there. It's a big gold anomaly, and there's kind of a bit of and Alex first pointed this out. He's like, in the geochem, it looks like there's something blanking out part of this big gold anomaly, and turns out there's just a little bit of a kappa sustat. It's actually sustat, cover rocks there, the Upper Cretaceous cover rocks, and it's not really. It's almost subcrop, but it blankets out the gold anomaly. Probably just drill right through that thing and head southwest with the hole. That's where sort of the nicest geochem anomaly, and there's a nice chargeability anomaly there. So let's start there, and then like as I said, there's it's a 5 kilometer trend, and yeah, I think just one hole you got to be careful. Let's drill a few, in various places along trend, and we'll do a little prep work. I think when we first arrive there and are getting things all mowed in. A little bit more geology, and maybe some CSAMT or something like that. Might do a little
Yeah,
bit more
yeah,
prep.
that's my next question, actually. Is there any follow-up work that you need to do prior to the drilling? And like you said, like this is 4,000 meter trend. So one hole is not enough, 5 hole is not enough. I don't think 10 holes is enough. Do you script your first 5 or 6 holes and say we just need to get more data no matter what, and then you kind of zero in from there?
Yeah, I think it's worth doing that. Since we had the property, there was some very good prospecting, in a brief program very early on, like in 2010 or 11 or something. The Bjorkman family prospectors, the gals from out in Ontario were on the ground, and of course they're excellent prospectors, and dug up some really nice veins and stuff. But since then, we haven't really focused any prospecting, so probably get some prospectors on there for a few days when we first get in, and have them go to, hey, there was an 11 gram per ton gold in soil geochem anomaly within a nice broad soil geochem anomaly. Get down there and see what you can root out, because no one has ever been there to prospect that. So things like that. Definitely do a bit more geologic mapping. We haven't hit every part of that property that way, and it's been done by a number of people, myself, Roy, my son, and a couple other people, and but haven't really, don't have as good a geologic context as I typically would like. I think you could just go there and drill for sure without doing that. But yeah, of course, it'll give you a lot of information. So we'll go do that. And then, yeah, I'll talk to Alex a bit more about what exactly he'd recommend to do geophysically before we tackle it. But we could do something like that too.
Okay, very good. Let's go back
Yeah.
to Stephen and talk about some of the other projects in the company. I know NIV is the main event here going into 2026, but you have the Highland Valley project. You have a pretty good asset there near Teck's Highland Valley mine, and you even have a project in Manitoba. So what's going on with the other projects in the company portfolio?
Yeah, well, look, thanks for bringing it up. There's no question that NIV is the main course right now, but it doesn't. I don't want it to overshadow too much the other assets we've built in Metal Energy, including another nice copper project right in British Columbia, which Charlie and his team know very well. In fact, they were doing all the boots on the ground and consulting work for us within Metal Energy prior to us striking a deal on NIV. We own a very, very large land package that straddles the west, south, and east of Teck's Highland Valley. It's Canada's largest copper mine. And I guess as everybody knows now, it's going to be part of Teck Anglo or whatever they're calling them. But like that's been in production for decades and decades. The mineralization trends towards us. We have a number of zones that have been drilled out that are I wouldn't say drilled out, but drilled, and we definitely have the right rocks. I'll let Charlie speak a little bit more to that. But the property itself needs it needs more love and attention. It needs the same sort of love and attention that we're going to give NIV in 2026. That needs to go on to our Highland Valley project. So it's great ground, great zip code, needs love. We've had, and why haven't we given it love? Because we've actually been the permitting process on that particular project has been slow. We acquired it, let's round figures, about a year ago. And I think because Teck has been doing so much work there, and Teck's great, on the ground, great relationships, but they're extending the Highland Valley mine out to 2048, I believe, and so that had been the focus for not just the province but also the First Nations there, and so moving things forward for a small junior had been very, very slow when the province was on strike. So nonetheless, it's a wonderful project. It's going to get its love and attention from Metal Energy, but it's for now it's taken a back seat to something that is ready to go and certainly has a more compelling direct target to go on NIV. And then last but not least, although this commodity is in the doghouse, but the asset shouldn't be, we have a project called Mana Bridge, which is actually how Metal Energy started way back when, probably 3 years ago. We acquired an old Falcon Bridge mine that was in operation at the south end of the Thompson Belt in Manitoba, which is really nickel country. And we had a view on that asset that it was going to be more of a bulk tonnage. It was a high grade underground, 3% nickel plus PG copper and PGEs. But we saw evidence in the drill database, which is something we love to do at the ore group, is reinterpret old mines and old views on geology, and we had that view on Mana Bridge, and actually we proved it out. We drilled, I think it was about a 1.5 kilometer strike length, and we were getting intersections up to 70, 80 meters at sub 1% nickel, good grades. And so it was really the unfortunate thing is nickel fell out of bed in parallel. We were releasing 1% nickel intersections and getting sold off. It didn't matter what you do short of discovering Voisey's Bay during that nickel era. So we own it. We own it for a long time, so the claims are in good standing for, I think, for almost 15 years. I love nickel. Nickel's coming back. It's not coming back this year or next year or probably not the next. But it's a nice asset to own in the world's best mining jurisdiction, which is only going to get better in the next 5 to 10 years. So yeah, not only do we have the NIV, we've got Highland Valley in British Columbia, another copper asset, great ground, and then we've got Mana Bridge all under one roof. Metal Energy, where we now have we're going to be closing, any day now on that transaction you referenced off the top, obviously headlined by Teck and Centerra. Very tight share structure, sub 30 million prior to closing, welcoming new shareholders. We got lots of cash, which really just gives us kicks at the can to test the thesis that Charlie and Alex and his team put forward. That's the name of the game.
Very good. I'll take a question from the audience if anybody has a question for Stephen or Charlie.
Who wants to talk to me when you guys are throwing around amazing geospeak? I mean, pyrite shell, and then Charlie countered with gossiness. Charlie, I haven't even heard that word. That's a good one.
Gossins
Throwing
are
that in my
very
repertoire.
important, Stephen. You need to find the gossins.
Gossinus. I know the gossins, but the gossinus. That was a good one, Charlie.
No, I need Charlie to talk about tenor a bit more. What's the tenor of this porphyry?
Oh, yeah. I mean, That's kind of tricky. All you can really talk about at the moment is the tenor of the soil geochem, and that's very nice. It's high. I think I've got some comparables in there. You got to take all that with a grain of salt. It's how anomalous is it compared to the background? Well, this is very anomalous compared to the background. On the broader property or the broader immediate vicinities. If you look at Northwest Copper soil geochem, you go down in the valleys. Well, of course, you're not going to get great numbers down there because the organics are thick and there's colluvium that's come down the hill. There's another one for you, Stephen. Colluvium.
I'm gonna have to Google that one, Charlie. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Just a scree or whatever you want to call it that slides down the hills and covers things, and you're not going to get as high a number in that kind of stuff as opposed to say sampling right over a mineralized zone. So yeah, it's just it's got very good tenor that way. As I said, the gold geochem's high, copper's pretty darn high. Again, I think it's it's not in the thousands very commonly. It's in the hundreds, which is great. But if you had an exposed porphyry copper just weathering, stuff you'd mine right at surface, that would be in the thousands, I think, commonly. And so I think what I see is this is has potential to be a porphyry copper deposit, but it's not sticking right out of the ground. So it's there a little bit farther down, and you want the thing preserved. So I think it's just a very good target that way. And then the moly numbers are good too. So the tenor of the soils indicates that we're on a system. How good is that system? Only one way to find out. Truth machine.
Yep, truth
Spark it
machine.
up.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so here's the final question. This is a very good question. This is the essential question for any junior mining CEO or anybody who's pitching something in the sector. What's the size of the prize? And I'll let both of you answer it, or if just one of you wants to take it, that's fine. What's the size of the prize? What's the cost of the test? So how much are you going to spend this year to test this thesis? And what's the chances of success?
Do you want to do that, Stephen, or you want me to take that one?
Well, I'll as the promoter, I'll speak. It better be big. I mean, we don't raise this type of money and look for projects in this part of the world without going for size and scale. So we believe this has the look. If this is what we think it is, it certainly has the potential to be big. Because small doesn't pay the bills in this business. So the size of the prize. I think that's Craig Perry you're quoting, or maybe not, but he always says, so the cost of the test, size
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
prize,
I
something like
borrowed
that,
it
which is a
from
great
Craig.
line.
Yeah, yep.
It's great. It's a great line. It's very, very valid. And there's a third one I forget, but I mean, absolutely no. We're not going for small deposits here. We are in, call it elephant country. There's all sorts of analogous anomalies that have turned into mines in that area. So Charlie and his guys know what they're looking for, and how much is it going to cost us to test it? Well, we'll be closing on $9.3 million, before year end. In fact, before that, very soon. And the vast majority of that is flow through. I think, but $7 million of that is flow through, which needs to be spent in 2026. So I think that succinctly answers what our budget is on the NIV project this year, or next 26, that is.
Yeah,
And
and
what's the
that's
chance of a success? What's the probability? Guys, like what would you estimate the probability of a good result from this year's program is?
Well,
ooh,
you're just gonna have to wait for the drill results. There's
That's the question.
in case the Securities Commission is listening, either. No, like, look, you, I mean, you can't say. It would be misleading certainly for me or Charlie to insinuate that we have the odds. I mean, I think we do our best to mitigate the risks and qualify the targets. There's no question Mother Nature is a tricky lady, and she hides her jewels carefully. And which sort of leads me to one comment somebody said. Somebody really smart actually said, "Hey, this is binary. It is or it isn't." I disagreed. I said, no more or less than any other project. Okay, so it's binary in the sense that first hole that you've scouted for us, Rob, You know, it is binary whether that one hole is an economic grade or not. That's binary, but one hole or two holes or 10 holes will not necessarily define this project. Maybe we get lucky and we hit a monster. You know, you don't want to take that possibility off the table, but you know, that's not what it's about. It's about the science, it's about doing the work, and it's about vectoring into ultimately what could be a deposit.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a good that's a good point. And if you look at American Eagle's project, I mean that thing had 70 holes in the in the 90s drilled into it, and yeah, some of them are very good, and some of them are low grade. But things have changed. You know, metal prices have changed, and we've drilled another 80 holes in the last 4 seasons there. You know, doing that work for American Eagle through our little contracting firm, and it's a game changer. It wasn't successful maybe in those initial exploration programs and turning it into a deposit. And you need sometimes a lot of holes to prove up something really large, or find another zone that takes it over the top in terms of the kind of tonnage you need to initiate a project development. So lots of different ways of going about it. And, when it comes down to exploration geology, this is a very, very nice target. Makes, pretty obvious where you're going to point the drill. Sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to diss you there. With your initial holes, but again, it doesn't, the American Eagle example tells you that maybe that first hole or two or 10 doesn't get you the prize right away, but you're in the right ballpark. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, it's a compelling target. Thank you, gentlemen. I look forward to a year of news flow from MERG, and it's always nice to have a couple of solid backup projects as well in case the NIV doesn't have the abundance that we hope she does. Cheers. Thank you very much, and this will be up on YouTube in the next couple of days.
Thanks very much,
Thank you,
Rob.
Rob. Thanks, Charlie.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.